So here we are at Heraclea. Crap off the board. And the Pyrrhus took his initial elite leader action. He drove one legionary unit away with these guys, moved his elephants, and routed the last of the cav. That one actually tried withdrawing a couple of times. That was as painful as fighting, at least, although by the time it made its last roll, the javelins probably would have put it under. Alright, now we go and we'll be looking at one of these kind of crappy, there are a couple of these Praetors that are kind of dangerous to use to rally units, but not really very effective for anything else either, so taking the chances on the rallies is better than doing nothing with them, I guess. Well, of course, as you probably realized from watching my vids, I never do what I said. I used one of the Praetors to launch attacks, and they actually did quite a good job knocking a phalanx out of the way. And I think the other unit also he got multiple successful actions. And this guy actually got 2 actions as well, and didn't do any rallies, just moving forces forward in there. I'm thinking that the Romans have won already. Yeah, there's still a strong and powerful presence over here for the Greeks, especially with those elephants, which, haven't really taken any damage whatsoever. But that's all they got. I mean, they got some cav over here that maybe they can, they certainly exposed flanks there. And no matter what, there's going to be exposed flanks with that cav, unless I get a solid line in place. But the whole center is just gone. I mean, I got 2 phalanxes holding that center, and that's it. And they're completely exposed. Those other 2 routing off might be able to, whatever comes down here, I might be able to do something with and try to get it in with the rest of the army. But there's a lot of good Roman units left and not a lot of good Greek units left. Well, the Greeks have pretty much mopped up the Roman left. But we still have a Roman center that's not in terrible shape, probably not much worse off than the Greek army is. And then the Roman right is very, very powerful. The Greeks managed to make some attacks, fall back, and rallied their phalanxes. I don't know how much good that's going to do, because they're going to get slammed again and driven further off the field, but at least they got to do some damage. Okay, after a little bit of reforming, the Greeks especially trying to build something like a formation back up. The Romans mainly just trying to rally their forces, and some of that obviously failed. We went to the Greek moving their cav, and they broke up the Roman right flank, the extreme right, which is to be expected, as well as using their archers as well. But they also did a little bit of reformation beforehand to make it a little easier. Now we're up to the big guns, and first we take the consul, wherever he is, here he is down here, who's going to try to drive those phalanxes out of the way, giving up his flank probably, but yeah, it's hard choices. And if he gets continuations, he can try to form this up so it's a little more defensible, maybe up against the river. But, well, those phalanxes are going to be hard to move. So I think I'm going to go for the defensive first. But there's always the threat of the trump, and that's very likely with Pyrrhus trying to break his momentum and make a move. Pyrrhus doesn't have anything he tremendously wants to do. He'll probably just be trying to recover some of his forces. Well, the Greeks had enough. Actually, things were looking kind of bright in terms of position. The Romans pulled back. They didn't hit the phalanxes. I'm thinking those phalanxes could have held a good line while this advanced. All kind of cool stuff could have happened, but Losing 2 phalanxes this turn, that's 140 points right there, plus another 20. Brought them up to a 559, they only need 512 to give up. 406, they needed 533. The Greeks are going to try to get off this field. And I think very clearly, so far, the battle has been a Roman victory. Yes, there may have been some opportunities to try to even things up, but this was a painful turn with a couple phalanxes going. One thing that I noted, nothing in particular about this game, I made a lot of mistakes. It still felt okay. And I'll say the same about a lot of the kind of complex operational games. Yeah, it's possible to lose a lot in some games. For example, the OCS can be very unforgiving if you screw up your supply lines. But most games that I'd call sort of your classic war game are pretty forgiving, actually. Even the big strategic ones, you can make some big mistakes. You can definitely lose the game off those mistakes, but it doesn't feel ridiculously ahistorical in the sense that some games, the operations you're capable of performing feel ridiculous. 2 things come to mind here. One was my experience with Paths of Glory, and I think a lot of the point-to-point systems face me in this way, and maybe it's just because I can't conceive of the map properly. But you definitely saw, I think, situations there where I had to go back and try to fix something because rules were so broken. My interpretation of the rules was so wrong, or of what strategy should be, or where I was blocking something and I wasn't. Another game that's similar to that I can think of that looks more like a traditional hex and counter game, but definitely is not, is Hitler's War. To me, it's very frustrating, although these are great games perhaps. Certainly Hitler's War is a very interesting game, and Paths of Glory, I'm not sure it's really my cup, but, you know. But with something like this, I feel like I can make big errors on either with tactics and certainly with the rules, and it still kind of feels like a reasonable battle. It doesn't feel like, you know, I've changed World War I, for example, into a game of massive encirclement everywhere. It doesn't feel like World War II is just this encirclement versus counter-encirclement, which is these really, really silly situations, in my mind, become the norm in Hitler's War. Even basically when the front's kind of breaking, I think there's something actually flawed in the game because it doesn't feel like that's just, I mean, you can make a big mistake and get your whole army surrounded, okay. But you can not make mistakes and be each cutting the other off of supply. In this, yeah, maybe, you know, the Romans had some situations where they got an edge because they moved more units than they should have. I'm not sure how much that really helped them, to tell you the truth. And I think I had the same kind of situation with the Greeks, for that matter. But anyway, I had fun playing this. I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm not sure I'm going to jump to it right away. I got other things I want to play. I don't know. I may want to do something a little light, just to fire off. On a sad note, just to keep people in contact with my life or whatever, trying to deal with the post office, which is a constant hassle for me because they won't deliver mail. They won't deliver my packages, and obviously I have lots and lots of them that came, so I can understand their refusal. But anything that's too big to fit in my box will not go, and they won't even come to my door. And anything that fits in the box, they may or may not choose to put it in. And they leave me this slip, and when I go and talk to them at the post office, they basically tell me there's no option but to come pick it up. if I put a request in to have it delivered, it's just not going to happen because the mailman doesn't pull those out. Well, I wrecked my car trying to get a package, and that's not a big deal. My car is not worth a hell of a lot. Unfortunately, the guy's car that I hit, or actually he hit me, but it's probably my fault. Well, at least that's what the insurance company's going to say, and it's to their advantage, actually. Anyway, you know, I finally called them up. There's central service there, and they're like, oh yeah, we can make sure that it gets delivered to you on Saturdays. Well, actually, the problem is they didn't come to my door on Saturday when I was here, but that's something different. Anyway, you know, my life has just become hell ever since I got a car, but now I'm probably in debt for years because somebody had an expensive car and decided to remove my bumper with it. Oh well.